Hey YouTube, this is David. For years, Apple's iPad has set the bar for tablets. If you are making a tablet, the iPad is what you'll be judged against and ultimately compete with. In light of this, Google has traditionally worked around Apple's tablets. The small and cheap Nexus 7 carved out a niche for itself by filling a need Apple's tablets didn't. Now small and cheap tablets are ubiquitous and Google doesn't need to show other manufacturers how it's done anymore. So for its new Nexus 9, Google took a different approach. It went straight for the iPad. The Nexus 9 starts at $399, has a display with the same resolution and aspect ratio as Apple's tablets, and is made of more premium materials, red, metal. It also has a new, powerful Nvidia processor, the first 64-bit chip in an Android device, lots of RAM, and the latest and greatest Android software from Google. With the Nexus 9, Google is putting forth its best effort to beat or match the iPad. But unfortunately, the Nexus 9 doesn't beat the iPad in anything. And in many places, it doesn't even keep up. The Nexus 9's design is at the same time reminiscent of Apple's tablets and Google's own Nexus 5 smartphone. Its 8.9-inch, 2048x1536, 4:3 ratio display sits right between the iPad Air 2 and Mini 3 in terms of size, but with the same number of pixels and aspect ratio. You'll see bars above and below video in landscape because it's not 16:9 or 16:10, but the Nexus 9 is so much better than Google's old tablets for reading and browsing the web in portrait that the trade-off is well worth it. The Nexus 9's display might have the same resolution and aspect ratio as the iPad, but it's not nearly as nice a screen. Colors aren't as vibrant or appealing, the screen isn't laminated to the glass as on the iPad Air 2, and the backlight bleeds into the edges of the screen in unsightly ways. It's not a bad display by any means, but it feels appropriate for a $250 tablet, not something that starts at $400. The 9's 8-megapixel rear camera and flash is par for the course for tablet cameras, i.e. not great and won't beat a good smartphone, but more annoying is how slow it is to focus and take a photo. The front 1.6-megapixel camera is fine for what it's designed to do, take selfies and do video chats. Google has often used its Nexus line of devices to debut new processor technology for Android, and the Nexus 9's Nvidia Tegra K1 chip is the first 64-bit chip in an Android device. The K1 has two main cores, 192 cores in its graphics chip, and is paired with 2 GB of RAM. The $399 Nexus 9 also starts with 16 GB of storage, while a 32 GB model is available for $80 more. Neither version offers a microSD slot for further expansion, so I'd recommend splurging for the 32 GB model. The multi-account support that's been available on Android tablets since version 4.2 has been refined and improved. There's an easily accessible guest mode, so you can hand your tablet off to someone else and not have to set them up with a full account to protect your private data. Apple's iPads still don't have multiple user support, and it's a great thing to have if you share a tablet among a household. But despite the new animations, updated apps, and fresh coat of paint, Android 5.0 Lollipop on the Nexus 9 doesn't feel much different than it would on a smartphone or phablet. Google hasn't done much to optimize the platform for the 9's larger display, and there aren't any different multitasking or productivity features than what you'd find on an Android smartphone. Though many of Google's own apps are designed to work well on tablets, the vast majority of third-party apps in the Google Play Store still look ridiculous on such a large screen. For all that Google has done to improve the hardware on its Android tablets, the app situation is where Apple still has the farthest lead, and the Nexus 9 and Lollipop do nothing to close that gap. The Nexus 9 would make a killer $249 or $299 tablet, but at $399, even last year's iPad Air is a better buy for the vast majority of people. And if you want something smaller than the iPad Air, last year's iPad Mini 2 undercuts the Nexus 9 by a full $100, while offering a better experience all around. It's hard to recommend the Nexus 9 to anyone outside of die-hard Android fans. Beating the iPad is hard. Many have tried, many have failed. The Nexus 9 is Google's closest shot yet, but it still misses the mark.